The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Well, good morning, Children's Health Defense. Happy Friday. If it's Friday, it must be time for doctors and scientists. I am your host, Dr. Brian Hooker. I am very excited for today's show because any time spent with Tommey is great time. We will always have a good time. We've been doing this for a long time. Polly, come on in here.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. It is, what is it, November 21st, 2025, year of our Lord. We've got a lot to talk about today, Polly.
We do, and this is a show, we do this once a month, where we turn the tables and I ask you questions, because we want to hear about our Chief Scientific Officer, if you don't mind. So that's what we're going to do today. But first of all, let's talk about the conference.
Well, the conference was absolutely amazing. It was so well run. There were so many moving parts that were going on behind the scenes that really just caused the whole thing to just come together so well. Was so well attended. To me, it's like a big hug fest because everybody there is huggers. I'm a hugger, and we get to see so many in our tribe. Absolutely, positively wonderful.
Talking of good things that happened at that welcome event, you and I gave Dr. Ben Edwards an award. That was my favorite part, I think.
Nobody deserved that award better than Dr. Ben Edwards. He did so much for the Mennonite community in Seminole, Texas, without receiving a penny. In fact, he probably went into debt over what he did by providing the appropriate supplements, providing appropriate care, treating bacterial pneumonia when appropriate, and saving so many individuals the heartache and the pain while being persecuted by the mainstream media.
Yeah, that's right. But wow, that measles panel that we did, Brian, was amazing. I mean, to have Daisy's picture up there and Daisy's dad. You don't know who Daisy is, everyone. She's the girl that they claimed died from measles, which we have told you a million times. She did not die from measles. But wasn't that a powerful panel? You were great on that.
That was a very powerful panel, having all the individuals and then having Dr. Corey break down, what actually happened in the two girls, Kaylee and Daisy, in both girls' cases, and how it was really gross negligence by the part of the hospital error all over the place, and what I like to call measles derangement syndrome, where nothing else can happen because it's the measles, and so therefore we do not treat. And you know what? Sucks to be you. You're on your own. You didn't vaccinate, and that's what happened to those girls.
His father was very brave to come up with that. Yes. On the panel and do that. It's very emotional, the whole thing. And you had a great panel, the mRNA.
That was talk about luminaries. Pierre Corey again on that panel, Peter McCullough, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Jessica Rose. So many good insights regarding the problems with the mRNA technology, and something that's very, very scary. It's called the self-amplifying mRNA technology, which is a vaccine basically designed to shed. So it's to go out and get us, quote unquote, anti-vaxxers, we're ex-vaxxers, excuse me, to shed on these individuals so they receive this self-replicating messenger RNA themselves.
Now, is this self-replicating mRNA, is it out already? Is it in the flu shots or anything like that? Do we know?
It is in the COVID shot that is being distributed in the European Union, and another COVID shot, I believe under the name Arcturus, that is being distributed in Japan. They've both been approved by the EU, which would be the EMA, and then Japan's regulatory body, much like the FDA. There is one biologic in the pipeline that has this self-amplifying technology. Prior to the current administration, they were looking at self-amplifying vaccines for avian influenza.
So basically, self-amplifying means that it's just it just didn't they test this on wild animals where they would put self-amplifying and it would just spread into the forests and stuff? That's what I heard.
Exactly. It would spread into different animals. It can spread indeed interspecies as long as the bacterial plasma and what it's called is replication competent, which is what self-amplifying does. It gives it the ability to replicate in mammalian cells and continue to replicate copies of itself. So the messenger RNA of the spike protein would end up if I got the shot and I was hanging out with Polly and our producer Lou, then it would shed to them, then they become spike protein factories, and then that spreads to their families, and so on and so on and so on. It's insidious.
So you have no idea who you're standing next to in a queue somewhere or line somewhere that you could be shed on.
Exactly. And I have to wonder what was in the mRNA shots that were given during the COVID era, because we're finding individuals that never received the vaccine that are still producing spike protein. And we're finding the messenger RNA in those individuals as well. So there's no doubt there's shedding of both the spike protein as well as the messenger RNA in this technology that was deployed in the United States. Heaven knows it would be much, much worse if we had what's called an RNA amplicon in there that could cause this to shed even further and to a greater extent.
Well, now, before we move on from the conference, we had a panel called Spellers, and
Yes.
your son is doing that technology. Did you watch the Spellers panel?
I was there and I was in tears. It was absolutely amazing. The individuals that were spelling on stage were two were on keyboards hooked up to like an iPad, and one was using a letterboard. Their answers, their insight was so stunning, and the questions so well done. And the way that it was done, Polly, was there were cameras above the individuals too, so you could see from the back them, poking out their answers. You have to really commend the communication partners. Also, the people that were helping, Don Marie Gavin and Dana Johnson were helping in the background to make sure that these spellers were staying regulated. And it just came up across so amazing. It's such a miracle technology. If you have a child or an adult son or daughter that is nonverbal or unreliably speaks in script or speaks in loops, this is really something that you need to check out.
Yeah, and I've had many people, many staff as well at Children's Health Defence doing it with their children, saying it's phenomenal. And your son is really starting to communicate. I mean, telling you amazing things, right?
Absolutely. He is the always been the light of our lives, but his trajectory is so much more exciting and robust, and he will go on to achieve some of his dreams, goals, and aspirations after being locked in himself for 26 years.
It's amazing, a miracle from God. And just to everyone listening, if you don't know what this is, please look it up, because what it'll do, if nothing else, is teach you that when you see someone that you think is so profoundly injured in some way that they can't hear you, they understand everything. They just can't let you know they understand everything until the spellers came along. Correct, Brian?
Absolutely correct. They do understand everything. They hear everything. They hear way, way more than you think they hear. My son has like spidey, or bionic hearing, so he can hear us if we're entire way across the house. If we're whispering, my son can still hear us. And so they're picking up everything. They're absorbing everything. They're learning at a very, very rapid rate. And I believe all these spellers, you look at their trajectories, they're finished high school, or they're in accelerated high school, or they're going to, they're embarking upon college. Some of them are, enrolled in college. My son wants to go to graduate school at MIT. And, so these are things that we never expected in our wildest dreams.
Truly amazing. All right, well, look, let's move on now to these headlines. Now, these headlines are ridiculous, but you break them down. You're the expert. You tell us what you think. Let's bring the first one up. Okay, so COVID-19 vaccines may help some cancer patients fight tumors. I mean, come on. All right, over to you, the expert.
This is really a ridiculous study. When I looked at the raw data, it's very, very difficult to see how the COVID vaccines would, supposedly they initiate some type of T cell response that will fight tumors. Well, COVID vaccines do absolutely opposite. They suppress the innate immune system through several different mechanisms that are tied to the spike protein, tied to the modified messenger RNA, and tied to the lipid nanoparticle that suppress innate immunity. And what we're seeing is exactly the opposite. So it's like the mainstream media has glommed onto this narrative. And when they did this study, they introduced 39 cofactors, covariates, and into the study. And when you do that, you dilute out any possibility of finding really what's going on. So if you want to fit that like Jeff Tucker did with his study that waffles cause male pattern baldness, you could fit that. If you want to fit the outline of an elephant, you could fit that. I mean, this is just really an amazingly bad study.
Yeah, but I mean, think of all those people. I mean, first of all, who in their right mind is having a COVID shot in this day and age? Seriously, who?
Right.
And
Yeah, the
second,
uptake is so low.
and all these people with cancer, so many have got cancer from the COVID shots, now are going to be persuaded, because some are, to take another one because it's going to kill them. In my
And
opinion.
there's by no way, in that particular shot, you would see the mechanism that they're claiming is absolutely bogus. It's a very, very small sample size. And again, they introduced 39 covariates, which just muddy the water and help these scientists show exactly what they want to show. It follows the mainstream narrative absolutely perfectly.
All right, let's bring the next headline up. COVID during pregnancy is linked to autism and developmental disorders. Study says, come on now.
Well, actually, if you go back to the original data, there is no linkage. There is no statistically significant linkage between autism and developmental disorders. And I would contend that this is a commercial for the COVID shot during pregnancy, which was never tested during pregnancy and should never be given during pregnancy. And what the study did not show was what was the relationship between the COVID vaccine during pregnancy and autism. So they claim that the infection was causing autism, but what happens when you add the COVID shot on top of that? An mRNA technology where we know that the spike protein does end up on the baby side of the placenta. It does circulate into the developing fetus.
And they're desperate, are they not, to find anything but vaccines causing autism?
Right.
Anything.
Right. We're as a society, we're like cats, following a laser pointer. And so they move the laser over here. Okay, look over here. Don't look at vaccines. Look at COVID infection. Look over here. COVID shots can prevent cancer. Anything to mask the fact that this has been mass societal poison.
New CDC work group to study aluminum in childhood vaccines. Tell us about that, please.
Leave it up to Secretary Kennedy to do the right thing. We're finally looking at the cumulative exposure of aluminum in vaccines and what are the long-term effects of that exposure. We know that the way that vaccines in the childhood schedule are developed, they are basically an aluminum delivery system to the brain. Polysorbate 80 and other components of vaccines soften up the blood-brain barrier. Aluminum is then injected in high quantities, upwards to 800 micrograms per shot, and upwards to over 2 milligrams. That's 2,000 micrograms per practitioner visit at 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months of age. And so we have a delivery system that gets aluminum in the brain. And so finally, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, is forming a working group that will look at the effects of aluminum. It needs to be ripped out. The vaccine schedule needs to be optional, quite optional in every state. and we need to stop experimenting on our babies.
Yeah, and surely there's no safe limit or in any human for
No,
aluminum. It's toxic.
it exceeds the existing safety limit by over 500 times in a single practitioner visit, primarily where babies are loaded up with aluminum are at 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months. And it's just got to stop, Polly.
It has got to stop, exactly. All right, well, let's find out now what is going on in the Children's Health Defence Science Department, headed up by one and only Brian Hooker.
Well, we're very, very excited. We have a paper coming out called The Neuroimmunology of Autism. It is a deep dive into the literature regarding neuroimmune mechanisms that have been tied to the etiology of autism. And this is going to usher in a series of papers that we're writing. These will be peer-reviewed published papers on vaccines and autism. They're written from a mechanistic standpoint, looking at neuroimmunology, and they're also looking at mitochondria dysfunction, how vaccines cause mitochondrial dysfunction that leads to the autistic disorder. So we're very, very excited on these upcoming developments. We're also doing cutting edge research on acetaminophen and autism, or if you're in the UK or in the EU, paracetamol. We're finding that when you inject juvenile rats with acetaminophen or Tylenol on a weight adjusted basis of what the standard dose of acetaminophen would be in infants, that we're seeing what's called the adducts of acetaminophen. These are the toxic byproducts of acetaminophen accumulate in these juvenile rat brains. This is preliminary results. So we're under confirmation right now to see if this actually happens. But these are studies that are being financed by Children's Health Defense, by our donors, and they're being overseen by CHD scientists, namely me and Carl Jablanowski.
When I was in England, people were laughing at this whole acetaminophen and autism link, but I strongly believe there's something in it because all of our kids had so much of that. I know the vaccines were the trigger that finished them off, but they had so much Tylenol, Carl.
Right, and we had the whole social media virtue signaling, anything, with their Trump derangement syndrome and their Kennedy derangement syndrome. Basically, a woman standing there pregnant, popping Tylenol. I mean, talk about the hubris and the stupidity all rolled into one, while they're, basically risking their developing baby's life. It's just unfathomable that they would do that. We're actually finding that the postnatal period, after the baby's born, right after cord clamping, is the period of the highest susceptibility to damage due to Tylenol. And Polly, what we're really finding is that vaccines followed by Tylenol, they are the 1-2 punch. They're what's taking these kids down. They're what's causing these kids to regress into autism. And it's really, really unfortunate because practitioners to this day, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists are still recommending Tylenol after vaccinations, Tylenol during pregnancy, both before and after vaccinations. And, this needs to change. This is an easy fix. This is something this is low-hanging fruit. We should have done it yesterday.
But you're not saying that, so yes, go Tylenol following vaccination, but you're not saying vaccinate, are you? Let's just get that clear.
No, there are a million gazillion reasons not to vaccinate your child. One of them is the oxidative stress and the oxidative damage that is showing up in these genetically susceptible children. And then the tipping point for many of them after this big round of oxidative stress is then the use of Tylenol after vaccination.
Yeah, I cannot understand why people are not hearing us. And of course, they're banning us when we're trying to warn on our platform. Okay, so those two things. Anything else from the science department?
Absolutely. We have a peer-reviewed publication coming out that rebuts the Anderson et al. Study that was to debunk the link between aluminum in vaccines and autism. We actually point out the fact that in this study, if you look at their supplemental data tables, they show that autism is statistically significantly linked to aluminum exposure, aluminum dose. Also, Asperger's syndrome and autism spectrum disorder, all linked, sitting there in a supplement that was buried, that you had to look for, was not in the main paper, but it was duplicitous of these researchers, all employed by the Danish vaccine developer Staten Serum Institute. And it is really duplicitous that the lead author on this paper, a guy named Anders Hvid, has lied about the thimerosal on autism. He's lied about the MMR on autism. He's lied about the aluminum in vaccines and autism. And now he's lying about the safety of the COVID shot. So this is the study. The lead author at the tail end of the authors list, Anders Hvid, is a serial liar. And he has been lying really since 2001, 2002 regarding the causes of the autism epidemic.
And why do you think he's doing it? He's probably getting paid bucks it's choosing money over truth.
Choosing money over truth. Money talks. And, this is really a gun for hire. The vaccination industry has hired him to be a serial liar. And you know what, Anders, if you're right, come and debate me. Come and debate me. If you're watching the show, I call you out right now. Come and debate me regarding the safety of aluminum in vaccines, mercury in vaccines, the MMR vaccine, the vaccination schedule. We'll have it out. It can be very, very public debate in a mutually chosen venue with mutually chosen questions. And let's get to the bottom of this. I mean, if you're so sure as shooting that vaccines are not causing the autism epidemic, then show up.
Yeah, but these people don't do it because they know they're wrong. They don't care. They're taking the money. They don't care that they're killing children. They don't care. They don't care.
No, they absolutely, positively do not care. There were reporters that were embedded at the CHD conference that wrote hit pieces, that wrote blogs, that appeared in, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Bloomberg. Everybody was taking a piece out of Children's Health Defense. But you know what? Do better. In the chronic disease epidemic, if you're so concerned about what we're doing, why don't you take this in hand and you tell us how you would end the chronic disease epidemic? But honestly, when you talk to these people, they claim there is no chronic disease epidemic in children, yet they see children suffering on the left and the right of them every single day. You cannot look away from this.
No, you cannot. This has been so much fun. I love doing this show with you, Brian. I wish we did it more often, but it's important that we break down the mainstream media lies. And so thank you for that and updating us.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Anytime that I get to talk with the wonderful Tommey and talk about children's health defense science, that is time well spent. We're really, really working hard at the science department. And our primary objective, I listen to people like Carl Jablanowski on stage. He's regularly bringing people to tears with the facts and the figures and with the truth behind the facts and the figures. I'm so grateful that I get to work with this organization every day.
Yep, I'm sure you are. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Well, it's your show, so you end it.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us for this important episode of Doctors and Scientists. Tomorrow, Saturday, November 22nd, I will be speaking at the Informed Choice Iowa Conference in Des Moines, Iowa. Check out informedchoiceiowa.com or look for ICI Conference in Des Moines, Iowa to get more details.
For life. Okay, tell us your name, please.
My name is Amanda Ewing.
And you are?
I'm Anne, Hopkins Valley.
And you are mum to you?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so let's start with a story about your son. Tell us, how old is he now?
He's 9, almost 10.
9, almost 10. So he was your firstborn?
Yes.
And so when you were pregnant with him, did you and the father have any conversation at all about vaccinations?
We hadn't, but we had started questioning the system when we watched The Business of Being Born and learned what a racket the birth world is. And we realized there was a lot more corruption than we realized. And so I think our eyes were open to checking into things, but no, we hadn't really thought much about it until she brought something up to me.
And you are in a medical professional?
Yes, I'm an occupational therapist specializing in pediatrics with a subspecialty in sensory integration.
And you were warning your daughter about what?
Well, in my practice, I had seen many families who had talked about that their child had been typically developing and just on this really normal trajectory until the 12-month shot or the 15-month shot or the 18-month shots, and then the development completely regressed and changed. And I kept hearing these stories over and over as I would do my initial evaluations with the kiddos, and it just bothered me so much. I thought something is happening here and people are not aware of it, and the record number of kids on the spectrum was just mind-boggling to me, and I just was on the front lines of it. So I told Amanda what I was concerned about. I didn't really know a lot about it, but I wanted her to do some research because I thought if there's any way we can prevent, some of these things from happening, that we should take every precaution that we can. So she actually did a lot more research than I did to get herself educated about vaccines very specifically, whereas I had just sort of a more general knowledge based on the reports of the families that I worked with.
Yeah.
And so did you listen to your mom?
Yeah, I remember the day she told me and just thinking, well, if they can do this to birthing mothers in terms of the stuff that happens in the hospital, then maybe she's right. There's more corruption going on and I should probably look into it. So when a class came up available, taught by a naturopathic doctor in Portland at the midwife clinic where I was going to deliver him in a birthing center, I took the class. It was a vaccine class, and she was great. And she went over just every vaccine. She talked about every single one. She talked about the risk factors of why you might want to get the shot or not get the shot, some of the ingredients, different things. She didn't tell you not to get them, but she definitely was on the side of like, you should probably watch these things. And what I took away from that was you can always wait and do them later, but you can't take them back once you've done them. So I thought, okay, I'll wait. So I waited. I said, we're not doing any the first year. He'll be home. He won't be in daycare at all. So we'll just wait. And my intention was to do more research and to be more prepared by the time he went into daycare. But at that time, I'd been in a master's program, and I had a gut feeling that maybe I shouldn't do any, but I also didn't want to be an anti-vaxxer. I wanted people to listen to me that some of them were bad, probably, and then to do some research. I wanted to help people. That was my thought. But I thought they're not going to take me seriously if I don't do some. And I also thought there have to be some that are useful. There have to be. It can't be that every single one of them doesn't make any sense. So I knew I wasn't going to do most, but when he went into daycare, I got scared. And I thought I should probably do whatever it is that my naturopath recommends. And I asked her what she thought. And she said, well, I'll never forget. She said, the CDC wants me to scare you, but I don't want to do that. So what I'll tell you is that whooping cough isn't fun. And, there's some other things that would be helpful. If you wanted to do the DTaP and the pneumococcal, those are the two I recommend as he's just entering daycare. And
so how old is he?
He was a year. He was 12.
And how was his first year?
Great, beautiful. He's very energetic, incredibly smart. I mean, he was singing like songs with words by the time he was a year. I have this Sesame Street song he could sing on his first birthday. It was incredible.
Yeah, he's very
walked at 9 months,
advanced.
very advanced. Yeah.
But in my experience with kiddos, most of the families that reported that regression in development associated it with the MMR. I was more nervous about the MMR than any of the other shots.
I think I was too. I think I was thinking if I can avoid the extras, the varicella and different ones, then great. And then if I avoid that one or I have time to do my research for that one, that's what I figured. So when she said these two, I trusted her. Thought, okay, we'll protect him before he goes to daycare.
Did he have both on the same day?
Yes, and then he had to finish out the series. I can't remember how far away that is, another month or something. He had to do another DTaP. Might have been 3, I can't remember. But he finished them.
And how was he in between them and at the end of them?
He seemed fine. I didn't notice anything different that was changing. It wasn't until he'd been in daycare for about a month, so about a month following, I'd say, the last shot, that we started recognizing that something wasn't quite right, because he was bleeding every time he had a bowel movement. So he wasn't having any neurological symptoms that we could tell. It wasn't that he regressed into autism, but he would bleed every time. His diaper was always bloody. And I remember one time I was leaving for a work trip. I was on a plane headed to Seattle. The plane had not left yet, thankfully, and the daycare provider called me and said, "You need to come get him. I've never seen so much blood in a diaper." And I rushed off the plane and took him to the ER, and they were very dismissive and just said, "Well, could just be a fissure. We don't know. We don't see anything. He seems fine." But the bleeding continued. It just never got to the point where it was so excessive that we thought we had to take him in all the time. It was just like, well, maybe he has a fissure, maybe he has a cut, okay. And we just sort of dealt with it, but then he started becoming aggressive. Once he was able to walk a lot more and be really active, he was pushing kids over a lot and slapping them. And I mean, there was just, his daycare provider was so sweet and really patient, but she was like, "I don't know what's going on. He gets so frustrated and he's just so aggressive." And he wasn't, we weren't doing that with him at home. And it wasn't until he started being able to really express himself that he would say, my tummy, it hurts. And I realized what he'd been doing was acting out of frustration because he was in pain all the time. And I didn't know that and realize, what was going on. So
At this point, are you realizing it's the vaccinations, of course?
at this point, I think probably around 2 was when I started to question it right away, but I really wasn't sure. And so I saw a couple different doctors. And at that point, too, he started getting sick more often. He ended up with pneumonia, a couple other things. He just seemed like he was getting sick more. And I took him to a few different doctors, mainstream, MDs, saw him, a couple naturopaths, and 3 different doctors said that they agreed that it was likely the shots, because it had come on so suddenly and didn't have any, things that we could pinpoint that would be causing it. So we went on a long journey to try to figure out what was going on. By the time he was 3, we did some allergy testing, and he was basically allergic to like all foods. It was yeast, soy, milk, eggs, wheat. It was just all the things, which he had never had issues before that. And he was a very good eater before those shots. I mean, even before a year, he ate really well, and he never had any problems, never cried, never seemed to be gassy or struggling. So we changed the diet. That helped with the bleeding. But the stomach aches just continued. They were just constant. He was always talking about them.
Mm-hmm. And he had the dark circles under his eyes, and he didn't sleep well, and it really seemed like it impacted his self-regulation. He's always been kind of a volatile child, particularly since the injury. I would say it changed how he was able to just cope with life and how he was able to regulate himself and just deal with everyday situations and everyday stimulation. I remember them bringing him to my house and everybody needing to be really quiet because, he would just be so affected by too much noise. And so we did a lot of sensory integrative techniques with him. We did some therapeutic listening, and they set up their house in Vancouver with this incredible playroom, and I kind of gave him some input as to what equipment to have in there so he could do all the heavy work and the crashing and the swinging and the just, he needed so much of that we were like, well, let's
put it in the house and just support that need, because from a sensory perspective, he sought so much intensive organizing sensory input. It was almost impossible to meet his need for the movement and for the crashing and the deep pressure. And he still struggles a lot with that. That's his hyperactivity is still through the roof. So that's not really ever changed. If I'm really careful with diet, really careful with supplements, we can get it better. But we tried a lot of different things. We took him to a lot of different doctors. We tried a lot of different protocols, so many things that we could think of, detoxes and different herbs and supplements and anything we could think of to try and help his stomach. And I'll never forget, we were going on a vacation once, and he was real excited. We were going camping. And I looked in the back seat, and he was just looking really down. And I said, "What is going on with you?" He was 6. And what is happening? And he said, "Mommy, I just don't think I want to be here anymore. I think I might just take my life." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I'm just in so much pain. And nothing we're doing is working, and I just don't think I should have to live like this every day. It just doesn't feel right." And I was like, "I know." And he was really discouraged at the time because we had tried another, treatment option. It was a natural treatment, but it had inflamed his throat, and he had had a sore throat for a year and a half following these natural treatments that we were trying. I mean, we tried thousands and thousands of dollars of different things to get his stomach to feel better. So we made it through those moments. He met this really sweet girl a couple years later that spoke some life into him, that had said that she had had the similar experience, that vaccines had injured her. She was, I think, 11 at the time, and she said, "I know what you're going through, but you just need to hold on. It's going to get better. It's going to get better." And I watched their little interaction, and he was just like, "Oh, okay. I think I believe her, Mom. I think it's going to get better." And it did, thankfully. I mean, his hyperactivity is still really a struggle for him, but his stomach doesn't hurt all the time. Yeah. And his throat finally calmed down, and it's not hurting all the time. So I would say in terms of pain, it's like we can handle the rest of the stuff as long as he's not in pain every single day. But I just was blown away by just the fact that it was only 2 and he was a year before I did anything. And we've talked about it many times. We feel very strongly that he would have been tipped over into autism had I started early.
I think he's just a really sensitive boy to begin with. I think it would have been tragic had she gone through with all of the recommended schedule.
But I do want to say one thing, that because I really want to honor Carter in that, over the course of our lives as a family, we've been able to share our story with different people. Some people have accepted it, some people haven't, right? But I'd say as a family, they really have. And so when COVID came up, we had these options, right, of taking these shots, and we know that our family is more susceptible to things, and we decided we're definitely not going to do those. And I was really grateful that the grandparents decided not to, that the aunties decided not to, that, we really all as a family discussed what had happened to him and all chose to be really careful and not do those things. And he said, "Mom, if all my suffering meant that everybody in the family is safe now, then it's worth it. And it's okay, even though it was really hard." So I'm really proud of him. He's really smart. He's very empathetic. And
He saved your family, basically.
he did. Oh, he really did. He saved his sister. He went to a rally once, and we made him a poster, and it said, "I'm vaccine injured, so my sister doesn't have to be." And he held it proud, very proud. He got to meet Dell, and everybody was real excited at the Capitol, and he was really, really proud. So, yeah.
So you did go on and have another child, and she's sitting off camera for a reason, but she's very healthy.
Yes.
And
Very
how many
healthy.
vaccinations did you give her?
Not a whiff. Not a single, and she never will. Never will.
And does she have any of the symptoms that your Connor has?
No. She struggles with some dairy stuff, but it's not serious, and she doesn't have tummy aches. And
Everyone struggles with dairy.
yeah, I think everybody struggles with
Something
dairy.
with the vaccine to do that one.
Yeah, nope. She's very, very healthy.
Yeah.
So what's your message, mother to mother watching right now who doesn't know what to do? Honest message.
I get that it's scary to not do what everyone is telling you to do, and I get not wanting to be labeled. But the best label you can have is a mom who protects her kids. That's the best label you can get. Is my mom protected me, and he's forgiven me, and I worked hard to forgive myself, but I had a gut feeling and I didn't listen to it, and I won't let that happen again. As a mom, my intuition is my superpower, and I trust it now, and I believe in it, and I do believe it's my guiding force. So if I would have trusted that, like if you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're a grandma, and you're in charge, like, trust your intuition. You don't have to do things that people are telling you to if you don't feel it's right. You need to take your time. Like they told me, take your time. Do your research. And don't just do it part way. Do all the research so that you're prepared.
Thank you. Is there anything else either of you want to add to this?
I would just like to add that there is hope for any situation, and there are people out there who want to help you. There's information out there that is credible. There is research that is available. I'm a huge fan of the high wire because it has opened my eyes to so many issues that have to do with government corruption affecting public health. And people really just need to be aware, but informed consent really isn't happening in every single doctor's appointment. And if you really want to know what's in whatever product is being administered to your children, you do have the right to know that, and you do have the right to opt out. You have the right. And your children are completely dependent on you for understanding what's going into their bodies. And there's a lot of unknowns, and people just blindly accept what the CDC says and what the pediatricians say. And even well-meaning pediatricians sometimes don't realize that there's a lot of harms happening because of the things that are going on in those basic appointments.
Good advice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming and warning us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Appreciate that.